People regarded this doctor as highly competent and honest, believing he would treat and heal patients. However, this same doctor mercilessly killed 260 people in his clinic. When the horrifying truth of his crimes came to light, people began calling him Dr. Death. Harold Shipman harbored no personal grudges. He murdered his own patients. The reasons behind his actions are shocking. Let's delve into the story of this serial killer. Harold Shipman was born in a middle-class family and had two brothers. He was the favorite child of his mother, who deeply cared for him. She wanted him to be very successful and always praised and encouraged him. This boosted Harold's confidence from an early age. When Harold was 16, his mother fell ill. After visiting the hospital, the doctor informed Harold that his mother had cancer and her condition was rapidly worsening. Distressed by this news, Harold devoted himself to taking care of his mother. During her treatment, he observed doctors administering morphine injections to her, which made her sleep for a while. Sadly, his mother passed away soon after, leaving Harold devastated. He was so grief-stricken that he couldn't study for several years. Eventually, Harold decided to become a doctor himself and started his medical studies. In 1974, he completed his medical education and began practicing in the town of Todmorden. This marked the beginning of his journey to becoming one of the most infamous Dr. Deaths in history. Harold Shipman decided to start killing elderly people. In his own words, he confessed that the first person he killed was a 71-year-old woman. When she visited his clinic, he initially prescribed her medication for a few days and then administered a lethal high dose of a drug called pethine. This drug, when given in high doses, is certain to cause death. In today's time, if a doctor were to give such a high dose, it would likely end their career and they would lose their medical license. Shipman continued to kill multiple patients one by one in his clinic. Initially, when the police learned about these deaths, they assumed the elderly patients had died due to natural causes or existing illnesses. Consequently, the investigations were not thorough, and the police did not suspect a doctor to be the killer. After killing several people in one area, Shipman moved to another town where he worked at a medical center for about 20 years. However, his compulsion to kill did not wane, and during these years he murdered approximately 71 patients. Each murder seemed to boost his sense of accomplishment. With growing confidence and the belief that the police would never catch him, Shipman decided to open his own hospital in 1994. Given that he had killed so many people while working in someone else's hospital, one can only imagine how many lives he would claim in his own facility. Because of this, Harold Shipman began killing patients at an unprecedented rate in his own hospital, earning him the nickname Dr. Death. However, he didn't start killing immediately. First, he worked to establish a reputation as a competent and caring doctor among the local community. He treated patients well initially, trying to cure them. Around 3,000 patients regularly visited his hospital, and Shipman knew that if the police ever questioned these people, they would speak positively about him. People believed he was an excellent doctor who took good care of his family and his patients. When elderly patients visited his clinic, Shipman would often mislead some of the healthier ones by telling them they had various illnesses. He would then administer a high dose of morphine, a drug that was almost guaranteed to be fatal in such quantities. This was the same drug given to his mother when he was 16 years old. He also gave some patients medication to take at home, instructing them to take it at specific times, which led to their deaths within an hour. In his own statements, Shipman admitted to ending the lives of 216 patients in his hospital. When others learned about these deaths, they considered them normal occurrences due to the patient's old age and illnesses. The police did not initially suspect anything either, as most of the deceased were elderly, and it was assumed they had died of natural causes. Shipman often attended the funerals of his victims, advising their families not to conduct post-mortems to avoid further distress, and people usually heeded his advice. This continued for quite some time without anyone suspecting the horrific crimes being committed. No one knew that a doctor, instead of healing patients, was killing them in his hospital. However, in 1998, a national survey was conducted by a medical authority team, which included an inspection of Harold Shipman's hospital. The results were shocking. The number of deaths in Shipman's hospital was significantly higher than in other hospitals across the country. His hospital, not being particularly large, made it highly unlikely that this was a coincidence. This discrepancy aroused suspicion within the team, leading them to believe something was seriously wrong at Shipman's hospital. They immediately reported their concerns to the police. When the police arrived at the hospital a few days later, they initially found nothing unusual. There were no obvious pieces of evidence that would directly implicate the hospital or Shipman in any wrongdoing. Even though the police initially found no evidence, they decided to keep the hospital under surveillance. They planned to examine the medical reports of every patient who died there to determine their illnesses. Harold Shipman was a cunning serial killer and knew that the police might come to the hospital again. Therefore, he meticulously recorded each patient's condition, falsely stating they had serious illnesses that required immediate treatment. He would treat them for a few days before ultimately administering a lethal dose of morphine, then noting in their medical records that they died of their supposed illness. Being a doctor, he could write any diagnosis and the families of the deceased would believe him. After a period of scrutiny, Shipman temporarily stopped killing and focused on genuinely treating patients. However, he soon prepared to kill again. Unfortunately for him, his next intended victim was Kathleen Grundy, an 81-year-old former mayor of the town. This time, his luck ran out. The increased attention from authorities, combined with the prominence of his next target, marked the beginning of the end for Shipman. The meticulous investigation that followed would eventually uncover his deadly pattern and bring his reign of terror to a close. Kathleen Grundy, who was 81 years old and known throughout the town for her fitness, rarely needed to visit a hospital. However, in 1998, due to a health issue, she went to Harold Shipman's hospital for a regular checkup. After receiving medication, she returned home, only to be found dead the next day. Initially, no one suspected foul play due to her age, despite her previous good health. People assumed she might have had an undisclosed illness and gathered to mourn her. However, a shocking discovery was made. Kathleen had left her entire estate to Dr. Harold Shipman instead of her daughter, Angela. This unusual will raise suspicions, leading Angela to report the matter to the police. The police decided to conduct an autopsy on Kathleen, which revealed that she had died from a morphine overdose, not from any illness. Following this revelation, the police and investigation team examined Kathleen's medical records, discovering that the illnesses Shipman had documented were fabricated. It became clear that Shipman had been falsifying medical reports for a long time, leading families to believe their loved ones had died from non-existent illnesses. The police then obtained a court order to exhume the bodies of several patients who had died after being treated by Shipman. Postmortems were conducted on 15 individuals, revealing that all had died from high doses of morphine, just like Kathleen. This evidence led to a lengthy court case, which eventually brought Shipman's heinous actions to light. In this case, Harold Shipman was sentenced to life imprisonment, though many believed he deserved the death penalty for his heinous crimes. People felt that someone who had murdered so many should face the ultimate punishment. In 2000, Shipman admitted to killing approximately 260 people, though some believe the actual number could be in the thousands, highlighting the extreme brutality of his actions. Shipman was notorious for killing innocent patients who visited his hospital hoping to get better but ended up dead instead. Despite not having any personal vendetta against them, he mercilessly ended their lives. This ruthless behavior made him one of the most dangerous serial killer doctors in history. In 2004, the doctor who had taken so many lives finally took his own life in prison. This is the story of one of the world's most dangerous serial killers, Harold Shipman. What do you think should have been the appropriate punishment for Shipman from the beginning? Please share your thoughts in the comments. If you are new to this channel, please support us by subscribing. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much.